We've all been there. You're out shooting, you check the back of the camera, and you think you've nailed it. The shot's in the bag. And then you get home, pull it up on the big screen, and your heart sinks. It's soft, it's blurry, and it's unusable. The most frustrating part? You have no idea why. Here's the thing most photographers don't want to hear. It's almost never your gear. Hi there, I'm Samantha. I'm a professional wedding, portrait, and landscape photographer, and I've been teaching photography for over a decade. And here's what I've learned. Every single photographer deals with blurry images, from beginners to seasoned pros. The difference between the photographers who overcome it and the ones who stay frustrated comes down to one thing: knowing how to identify the cause quickly and fix it before the moment's gone. Today I'm going to walk you through every cause of blurry images, how to recognise each one, how to fix it fast. And if you hang in there to the end, I'll give you my number one tip for how to use blur actually to enhance your travel and sports images. It's something most photographers overlook. And as a bonus, I'll cover the tripod-specific issues that catch people out when they think their setup should be rock solid. Let's start with the one I see most often from my workshop participants, not accounting for the movement that handholding creates. Take a look at this image. Notice that the blur is throughout the entire frame. Nothing is sharp. Now look at the shutter speed and the focal length I used. Here's the same scene with a faster shutter speed, and suddenly it's sharp. The fact that the entire image was blurry and the only change was increasing the shutter speed, that's your tell. This is the first thing I check if my image is soft, especially when I'm shooting in aperture priority mode without auto ISO enabled. The fix is simple. Increase your shutter speed or use a tripod. But how fast does your shutter speed actually need to be? Lucky for us, there's a rule. It's called the Reciprocal rule. That gives you a baseline. It's 1 over your focal length on a full frame camera. So if you're shooting at 200mm, you need at least 1 over 200th of a second. If your camera or lens has stabilization, you might get away with slower. And if you have any medical condition that causes hand tremor, you may need to go faster than the rule suggests. If your subject is moving, your shutter speed has to be fast enough to freeze that action. The way to diagnose this one is that the moving subject is blurry, but everything else in the plane of focus is sharp. Here's an example from the streets of Tokyo. Look at the road markings in front of and behind the taxi. They're in focus. That means the plane of focus should include the taxi, but the taxi itself is soft. Why? It's moving. And my shutter speed of 1/60th of a second was too slow to freeze it. Now, I'll be honest, for this particular image, I actually wanted that motion blur. I was going for the contrast of a blurred black and white taxi against the colourful Tokyo background. But if sharpness was my goal, I'd need to get around 1 over 250th of a second. Different subjects demand different shutter speeds. A person walking, maybe 1 over 250th of a second. A bird in flight, you're looking at 1/2000th of a second or faster. Over time, you developed an instinct for this. Just remember, the speed you need is affected by your distance to the subject, your focal length, and how fast the subject is actually moving. This one catches people off guard. If you're on a moving platform, a car, a train, a ferry, you need a faster shutter speed than you'd normally use. And here's the part people get wrong. Adding a tripod won't help. The platform itself is moving, so the tripod moves with it. Take a look at this. Same focal length, same scene, but one was shot on solid ground and the other from a moving ferry. These were the slowest shutter speeds I could handhold for each. I remember as a beginner photographer setting up for a sunset shot on a cruise ship at anchor. I thought tripod, 1/8 of a second, no problem. I was wrong. Here, the same image taken at 1/40th, sharp. The longer your focal length and the more the platform is moving, the faster your shutter speeds need to be. The only reason to use a tripod or monopod on a moving platform is to support heavier lenses, not to shoot slower. This one trips up even experienced photographers. Your camera has 2 key autofocus settings you need to get right: the autofocus mode and the autofocus area. Get either one wrong and your camera focuses on the wrong thing entirely. The mode determines how the camera focuses. AFS, or single servo, locks focus once and stays there. Great for stationary subjects, terrible for anything that moves. AFC continuous, keeps tracking. If you're shooting a moving subject with AFS, your subject will drift out of focus the moment it moves. The area determines where in the frame the camera looks to focus. If you leave all focus points active, the camera tends to grab whatever is the closest and has the most contrast. That's not always your subject. Switch to single point autofocus and place that point exactly where you want the focus to land. Now take this image of a deer in Nara, Japan. The camera grabbed the closest high contrast image, the deer's nose. The eye, which should be sharp, is soft. A single focus point on the eye would have solved this. There's also a menu setting that controls whether the shutter will fire without focus lock on. On Nikon, it's typically custom setting A6 or A8 under autofocus activation. If it's set to release, the camera will take the shot even if nothing is in focus. Switch it to focus priority. A complex or busy scene, like a bird in a forest with branches crisscrossing the frame, or these examples on screen. Sometimes it's having patience and taking a few images, and sometimes it's changing autofocus area that will solve this problem. These busy scenes can fool even the most advanced autofocus systems. The fix isn't complicated. It's knowing your camera's settings and matching them to what you're shooting. And if your camera has eye tracking, use it where it makes sense. Just don't assume it's foolproof. When it's really dark, your camera's autofocus simply can't see enough contrast to lock on. The lens will hunt back and forth, and if you manage to force the shutter, this is what you get: blurry across the entire frame. The fix is straightforward. Either introduce some light to the area you want to focus on, such as a torch, your phone's flashlight, or even the autofocus assist beam on your speedlight, or switch to manual focus. In situations like astrophotography, manual focus isn't just an option, it's the standard. Sometimes your camera looks like it locked focus perfectly, but when you zoom into 100%, the sharpest point is either just in front or just behind where you focused. You aimed for the eye, but the nose is sharp. This is a lens calibration issue. The lens and the camera body aren't perfectly aligned. This is much more of a common with digital SLR than mirrorless cameras, because digital SLRs use a separate autofocus sensor that can be slightly out of sync with the imaging sensor. Lens calibration kits exist, and you can try adjusting this at home. But if it's a persistent problem, take it to a camera repair shop for professional calibration. Now this one sounds obvious, but it catches people out constantly. Smudges, water spots, fingerprints on your lens or filter, they all soften your image. Keep a microfiber cloth or lens wipe with you at all times. A quick clean can be the difference between a soft image and a sharp one. Condensation is its own beast. If you go from an air-conditioned room into humid air, which happens a lot when you're travelling, moisture forms on the glass. I had this exact problem shooting in Fiji. Here's what condensation did to my images. After about 40 minutes, the moisture cleared up, and here's the same scene, sharp. The best fix is prevention. Pack reusable silica gel packs in your camera bag to draw the moisture out constantly. If you live in a humid environment, moisture can build up over time, so a dry cabinet or airtight storage container is worth the investment. If only a small slice of your image is sharp and you actually wanted more in focus, the cause is your aperture, focal length, and distance to subject, combining to create a depth of field that's simply too shallow. The fix is one of these three things: close down your aperture, use a shorter focal length, or step back further from your subject. Take this bride portrait. The shallow depth of field here is intentional. The eye closest to the camera is sharp, and that's technically correct. But here's the real danger when shooting wide open. There is zero room for error. If your camera misses focus by even a few millimeters, the image is technically wrong. Take this shot from Nara. The camera locked onto the fur just in front of the deer's eyes. At f2.8, those eyes are soft. But if I'd been at f4 instead, with that same focus point, the eyes would be sharp. Closing your aperture gives you a safety net. It buys you leeway. Some lenses, particularly older or lower quality glass, simply aren't sharp when shot wide open. The way to test this is straightforward. Stop down to somewhere between f5.6 and 8 if your image sharpens up, you found the culprit. Now, I want to be clear, this is much less common with modern mirrorless lenses. I don't currently own a single lens that produces results like this. But I still do reach for an old Lens Baby Composer Pro with an Edge 80 optic, which deliberately creates a soft tilt shift-like effect. Here's what it produces. If you have a lens that's consistently soft wide open, your options are limited. Repair or replace. There's no in-camera fix for poor glass. Haze, fog and steam rob your images of sharpness, and this one's especially common with super telephoto lenses or shooting from aircraft. The air itself becomes a soft focus filter. Here's an example from Japan, the famous snow monkeys bathing in the hot springs. In winter, steam rising off the water completely changes how sharp the image appears. But look what happens after some careful processing. In Lightroom, reach for the dehaze slider first. Then work with texture and contrast to bring back that crispness. You can't fully fix severe haze in post, but you can recover a surprising amount. The best approach on location is to reduce the amount of atmosphere between you and your subject. Get closer, use a shorter focal length if possible, and wait for conditions to be clear. High ISO noise doesn't technically make your image blurry, but it destroys the fine detail, and to most viewers, the result looks the same. High ISO noise doesn't technically make your image blurry, but it destroys the fine detail, and to most viewers, the result looks the same. It's soft. Here's what's happening. As your ISO climbs, your camera amplifies the signal from the sensor, and with it, the noise. Detail gets smeared, edges lose their crispness. The fix has 4 steps, and the order matters. First, nail your exposure in camera. Underexposed images pushed in post will always be noisier. Second, avoid heavy cropping. It magnifies the noise. Third, don't lift the shadows aggressively in post. And fourth, if you need to clean up the noise, use AI denoise before you sharpen. Denoise, then sharpen, not the other way round. Modern AI denoise tools in Lightroom, DxO or Topaz are genuinely remarkable. Images I would have thrown away 5 years ago are now usable, but they work best on well-exposed files. The better your starting point, the better the result. Now, as promised, what if you've eliminated everything we've covered and your camera is on a tripod, but you're still getting blurry images? There are 3 tripod-specific culprits, and they catch even the most experienced photographers. First, wind and vibration. Even a heavy-duty tripod can transmit vibration if it's not properly stabilized, especially if you have a square filter system or anything that catches the wind. I learned this the hard way. Here's an image from a windy shoot where I had the delay timer set, a heavy tripod, straps removed, everything I thought I needed, but the square filter system on the front of the lens was enough to catch the wind and ruin the shot. The fix: remove everything you can that can catch the wind. Then, tripod spikes are your best friend in wind and water. Drive them into the ground. And sometimes, counterintuitively, leaving vibration reduction on can help combat small vibrations from wind or moving water. Second, shutter press vibration. On long exposures, the simple act of pressing the shutter button can introduce shake. The fix is simple. Use your camera's built-in timer delay, a remote trigger, or an intervalometer. And third, stabilization fighting the tripod. On some camera and lens combinations, having IBIS or vibration reduction turned on while the camera is on a solid tripod actually creates blur. The stabilization system looks for movement that isn't there and ends up introducing its own. If you notice this, turn stabilization off. Now, before we wrap up with the diagnostic framework, stick with me, because after the checklist, I'm going to share my number 1 tip for using blur to enhance your travel and sports images. I put together a free PDF checklist with this entire diagnostic framework, every cause, the quick identification questions, and the fixes. It's designed to live on your phone, so the next time you're in the field and something looks soft, you can identify the cause and fix it in seconds. The link is in the description below. Now, I promised you my number 1 tip for using blur to enhance your travel and sports images, and here it is. Sometimes blur isn't the enemy. Sometimes you can use it deliberately to elevate an image, and the technique is called panning. Here's how it works. Instead of freezing everything with a fast shutter speed, you slow your shutter speed down and pan with the moving subject, keeping your focus locked on them as they move through the frame. The result? Your subject stays relatively sharp, but the background blurs into a smooth, streaking motion. And that does two things at once. It tells the story of movement, the viewer feels the speed, and it naturally minimises a busy or distracting background by reducing how sharp it is. A cluttered street, a messy tree line, it all melts away with that beautiful motion blur behind your subject. So here's the technique. Increase your shutter time. Start at say 1/30th or 1/60th of a second and adjust from there. Track your subject smoothly, keeping your focus point over them the entire time. Fire as you pan and keep panning through the shot, even after the shutter closes. That follow through is what makes the difference between a messy pan and a clean one. It takes practice. You'll throw away far more frames than you keep, especially at first. But when it works, when the subject is sharp and the world behind it is a beautiful ribbon of motion, it's one of the most satisfying techniques in photography. And that's the real lesson I want you to walk away with today. Blur isn't always a mistake. Once you understand why it happens, you can control it. And once you can control it, you can use it to frame a moment or to make it feel alive. If this helped you, give it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. And don't forget to grab that free PDF checklist in the description. It covers everything. I'm Samantha, and I'll see you next time.